Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. I'm Rosebud Reads, and welcome to my book garden. Welcome also to part 6 of Peerless Book 5, which is our second to last stream for this, which is so exciting. But yes, this is a chill stream. This is a chill channel, honestly. But it is also a mature channel, so there will be potentially triggering things in it. For this series, I have not read it before, so I do not know for certain if/when those things will occur. If you are watching this video later, you'll know if something happened because there will be a trigger warning. You'll know if something happened because there will be a trigger warning title. But if you are watching this live first, thank you. But also, I don't know when stuff's coming. So watch at your own risk, but also be kind to yourself if things start getting dark and you potentially think it might be an issue. It's totally okay to come back at another time. Maybe wait until the video is done and then check the timestamps and everything. That's totally okay. And hello, Chi Chi Kiki, and hello, Cookylicious. But yes, that is more than okay. No one will be offended. It's what you gotta do for yourself. And I will have a description in the description of the video, a very short summary of like what happened, what went down, and it'll be fun. Right back to the story. I don't know why it is. Right back to the story. Do you want to be called Jiang Rulian, or Jiang? Which do you prefer? Welcome. This is the second to last stream of Peerless for the whole series, so we're kind of tying things up. But yes, I am definitely well rested from the jet lag. It was a little rough this morning because I had to get up early, but I'm doing much better now. But yes. So, I am not sponsored. I don't make any. I do this because I can, because I want, because I like these books out there. I like everyone to have access. Appropriate, yes. Why I started it. Pronunciation is hard. I am not a fluent speaker, and I will stumble over character names, character places, and just random words, but I will do my best, and that's all I can do. But yes. I think that's about it. I don't really have anything new to add. Oh yeah, people like a card video because I did just get back from vacation. The chapter title for Peerless. There were really chapter titles. They're just, oh, you mean like if they actually named them? Yeah, that would have been interesting, but 10 numbers for Peerless. Have some for 7. That would have been interesting, but 10 numbers for Peerless. Have some for 7, but it's just like, oh, fun story. Title like 1,000 Autumns, but yes. So yeah, I know I usually like having at least 2 videos up per week, so I posted the card versions. Oh, there are chapter titles in the Chinese version? Huh. No, they just have, unfortunately, they just have numbers. So, is what it is. Does anyone have anything interesting that happened to them this week? Because I know we were gone for a week. I think the most interesting thing that happened was I did actually get to go to a land festival Super cool. They had this gigantic phoenix lantern, and I don't mean like, oh, you could carry it around. I mean like meter long across a field, and it was really cool. But it was kind of one of the cool things, and then just hanging out with family. But a good time was had by all. Oh yeah, it's a watch on birthdays. Little buds. We have some that are listening in, especially close. They're usually up on my shelf, but they get to have a front row. But yes, up on my shelf, but they get to have a front row. But yes. Anyway, we just head and a little. We're gonna start at 6. Let's see what happened last time. After we do a recap, we'll count injustices. So, Jiang, what we do is we count, started counting quite a number of them. And so we will get to that, and I think you will be surprised at the surprisingly high number for some of them. But all right. So last time we glanced at the young monk. So we have Feng Xiao hiding as a monk. Feng Xiao had no idea. He's so sorry. Is doing the ceremony. He's offering incense. And Feng Xiao is afraid the guards to put chamber pots in his, or rather next to his cell, and so he broke out because it smelled so terrible. Oh, that's exciting. It's very exciting, Young. You'll have to share more about that if you don't mind in a little bit. But so Feng Xiao had no idea He Zhang felt so sorry for him. In fact, he hadn't intended to infiltrate Da Xingshan Temple, but he'd only just escaped the Ministry of Justice and desperately needed to wash and change his clothes. Returning to the Jijian Bureau was not an option. Only if he remained in the shadows would he pose a threat. He'd been contemplating finding a brothel and pretending he was a wandering gentleman in order to rid himself of the stench when he passed Daxing Temple. Daxing Temple. The sandalwood and the oft sound of chanting had stopped him in his tracks. In the distance, a young monk happened to be returning to the temple. A brilliant idea bloomed in Feng Xiao's mind. He could never previously have given up all his worldly attachments, but things had changed. After marinating in the smell of chamber pots for hours, his nose seemed to be broken. Everything still reeked. He'd need to wash his hair 10 times at least. Psychological scarring was difficult to heal. Why not start anew? His neurotic need for cleanliness was the deciding factor. He crept up behind the returning monk, a young man named Kong Yun, and knocked him out cold. After tapping his sleep acupoints, he tossed him under a bridge on the outskirts of the city with some water and dry rations. The unfortunate young man wouldn't be back for several days, and Feng Xiao only needed one. He Zong's stumble was no accident. Feng Xiao deliberately led him toward the protruding brick. No matter how well one concealed their martial prowess, it was difficult to suppress reflexes. He Zhang's reaction had been that of an ordinary person. He couldn't be an infiltrator. Feng Xiao promptly turned his attention elsewhere. And your book is called The Fate of Diabolical Souls on either Lulu, the publisher, or Amazon. I think there are other places too, but I haven't looked everywhere yet. I'm going to take a picture. I'll probably look that up. That's really cool, Jiang Rulian. Okay. Throughout the day, he'd wandered all over the temple under various pretexts and seen no suspicious individuals. But it was possible they were too well hidden for him to find by simply walking around. Feng Er furrowed his brow, then smoothed it, resuming the act of a silent and dutiful monk. The emperor sat on the mat for a long time, but the chanting failed to soothe him. A restless beast seemed to pace anxiously within his chest. The war with the Gokturks had lasted 3 years. The previous dynasty had attempted to secure peace with the Khaganate through marriage, but the Emperor of Su refused to compromise. He opted to slowly grind the Gokturks down. He sent envoys to sow discord among the tribes while engaging them in open battle. This combination of soft hard tactics had also forced Khagan to sue. Achievement of those of Qi to unify disparate nations of the land, or the legendary Emperor Han. The Emperor himself was exceedingly pleased. Even if he didn't order it, future history texts would surely chronicle his contributions in vivid detail. Yet this joy had been unexpected by a series of setbacks. Someone had sought to catch him off guard with the solar eclipse. This much was true. Hello, Truffle. Why the question? What's wrong? Hello. How are you today? While the enemy could bribe Hong Yuan, they couldn't control the heavens. Could it be that the walls quietly depended? At the center of the vast Mahavira Hall, only Master Ling Zhang. Oh, your stream is being weird. If anyone else's stream is being weird, I forgot to mention this for all of our new viewers. Sometimes my internet does not like me. So let me know if it starts buffering and I will quickly reset the stream. You don't have to go anywhere. It'll come back up. But just let me know. The Emperor sat face to face, both silent. A long time passed. Was I too ruthless in eradicating the Yuan family? The Emperor seemed to be asking himself as much as Master Ling Zhang. Your Majesty already knows the answer in your heart, said Master Ling Zhang. Why do you ask me? The Emperor's voice was hoarse. No dynasty yields to another without bloodshed. What choice did I have? His voice trailed off. Despite his justifications, he couldn't rid himself of his guilt. Master Ling Zhen sighed. Heads are not like chives, Your Majesty. Once you cut them off, they will not grow back. Your Majesty understands this well. Your recent disquiet is due to your own inner demons. The people has greatly benefited the common folk. Such progress would never have been possible under the previous dynasty. Each year, countless civilians on the borders face slaughter or capture at the hands of the Gokturks. The line between good and evil is not a clear one. You've taken lives, yet you've also done great deeds. We cannot generalize. Your Majesty does what Your Majesty must. Remember your guilt over the Yuan family and become merciful. Hundreds of years from now, when all these events are history, the people of the future shall come to their own conclusions. Oh, I can imagine the shipping and import fees are insane. Cookielicious. Oh, man. I'm sorry. The Emperor's old friend was a monk through and through, and often spoke in abstruse terms that made it hard for ordinary folk to understand him. It was rare for him to offer such candid words of comfort. After days of being repressed, the Emperor's emotions finally surged to the fore. Eyes reddening at the rims, he forced a smile. Truly, you understand me best. Master Lingzhen's counsel had banished half his worries in one stroke. Allow me to recite a sutra for your majesty, suggested Master Lingzhen. The Emperor nodded. I would be much obliged. Master Lingzhen didn't overthink his choice. He casually recited a passage from the Surangama Sutra. The Emperor didn't need to hear him recite any text in particular. All he needed was inner peace. 1,000 words from a bystander was nothing compared to a single moment of self-improvement. Nice. Master Lingzhen repeated the sutra's words flowing water. His voice was aged, yet it wasn't hoarse, filled with the tranquility about slow ebb time. The fragrance of wood permeated the air, the rhythmic sound of chanting filled the hall. Gradually, the Emperor turned to a room. Scenes of the past flit before his eyes. His first meeting with Emperor Wu Shou, his youth, and they'd enjoy a hearty. All right. Okay. The subject had devolved into hostility. He'd endured and compromised for many years until Emperor Wu finally passed. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. Kindness and enmity, fondness and hate. It was no longer clear with whom each had originated. But the Yuan family had never killed a single member of the Yang clan. On the contrary, it was him who had exterminated them root and branch. If Emperor Wu was in the underworld now, could he let go of his grievances with a smile? The Emperor slowly turned to look at the giant statue of the Buddha in front of him, as if hoping to glean some answer from the Bodhisattva's faint and mysterious smile. The Bodhisattva's eyes were lowered, its lips shaped in a soft curve. Suddenly, the curve pulled eerily on the face until its entire expression warped. Its golden gaze swung over to rest upon the Emperor. The Emperor's eyes widened in shock. He froze as if struck by lightning. Quiet laughter drifted into his ears, pitched first high, then low, echoing ominously through the hall. The Emperor's first thought was that someone had intruded on them, but he soon realized the eerie chuckles came not from any living person, from the mouth of 24 celestial statues lining either side of the wall. Buddha's statues uncanny grin sharpened. The statue's arm swung down too him to evade. The Emperor cried out and clapped on the shoulder. He collapsed backward. Your face is a cold sweat sheening his brow. But there was no demonic statue. I should poke the bookstore and see if they have it. Journey with you so good. Nice. That's awful. That shipping fee hurts. Journey with you is so good. They have budget. Poke my local bookstore and see if they have it. Nice. Veil of Shadows. Budget for books this week. 3 books for the Niblet, and one that my dad needed. Feel that I'm on a tight budget. still like a week away. That's okay. We can make it. Okay. So, one thing I want to add, so that's our little recap. One thing I want to add is, do we remember what's connected to our sandalwood smell? I know the incense, but what else do we remember smells has a very heavy sandalwood or woodsy smell, and it causes hallucinations? Yes. It should be easy if you're in US or Canada. Not sure if any of them keep them in store. New to this, so not sure how it all works as an indie author. It's uncensored, but it's an original script, not adapted from any Don May novel. He needs it, but doesn't know he needs it. Aha. One of those. I got you. But yes. Okay. So. 22:30. So, now we get to our new stuff. So, as we begin, we shall start with the injustices and then move on to our chapters. Injustice to service workers, we have a whopping 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45 injustices to service workers, with a measly 5 justice to service workers. Our injustice to animals and plants is sitting at a thankfully small 6, with justice to animals sadly sitting only at 1. Our injustice to innocence is sitting at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 29, with only a half justice to innocence. Our injustice to paging Z alone is sitting at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 28, with the injustices to readers sitting at a sad 4. Finally, our gigantic shamelessness counter is sitting at a whopping 100, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 44, 144. And on that note, let's get started. Chapter 181. The still unchanged from when he had entered. The Bodhisattva's eyes remained lowered, compassionate amid the ringing of Buddhist bells. Emperor gasped, his chest heaving. Only when his palms slipped on the mat did he realize his hands were steady, they'd almost so cushion beneath him. His heart was racing. He looked around. The statue still seemed to hold a hint of uncanny savagery. Eerie, distinct laughter lingered in memory. Yeah. I think we might break the 200. We have 2 more. We can do it. And some of those are extras. What happened? You nearly succumbed to your inner demons, Your Majesty. Master Ling Zhang sighed. The Emperor's mental distress was severe than he had thought. He was surrounded by Buddhas, awash in their sutras, yet he had become more and more agitated. Oh, I believe one of the shameless counts was for robbing a monk and stealing his clothes. Yeah, that was last time. I heard the howling and weeping of ghosts, the Emperor said. I clung, refusing to rest. They tried to drag me to hell with them. The Emperor's back was still clammy with sweat. Somehow he felt this place was tainted, though he knew it to be impossible. Dashingshan Temple had been renowned for 300 years. What wandering ghosts or malevolent spirits would dare dance in front of the Bodhisattva and stood here for centuries? Feng Xiao and Meng Xi are some of the most gongs I know. Oh yeah. He met Master Ling Zan's eyes and found himself unable to speak this thought aloud. Perhaps I am simply too tired. While this old monk was wandering the lands, said Master Ling Zan, I learned of a calming drought that can soothe the mind and settle the spirit. Allow me to write it down for you later. You can ask the imperial physicians to look it over before you decide to use it." The emperor's smile was stiff. "Thank you." Seeing how listless he was, Master Ling Zan set aside the recitation of sutras. He instructed Hizong to open the doors and supported the emperor into a side room for rest. The Buddhist ceremony was a 3-day affair, with the second portion beginning in the afternoon. If nothing went awry, the emperor would fast and pray for 3 days. Afterward, the court would pass down an edict acknowledging the emperor's wrongs and seeking forgiveness from heaven, and the matter would be laid to rest. The officials were still waiting in Tianwang Hall, unaware of what had transpired. All they knew was that the emperor had exited quickly and that his complexion was poor. Daxing Temple took up an entire block by itself, and there was plenty of room within it to accommodate the imperial entourage and ministers. During the afternoon ritual, Yu Qingzi and the others followed the attending monks into the main hall so they could listen from the edges of the room. I still can't believe that fan is just a fan. It doesn't sprout his blades or the image's clothes don't fall off. Oh, fan is also shameless. Oh no, that's... yeah. But the emperor never made an appearance. Asleep in the side room, he was dreaming a long dream. He dreamed again of Yuan Yang, as well as his son-in-law, Yuan Yun, and the many people that he had killed. They were resurrected in his nightmare, their faces drenched in blood as they pursued him, intent on exacting revenge. The emperor fled them in his dreams until, exhausted, he finally struggled to wakefulness. As he gazed up at the sky outside the window, he realized night had descended. Young's gentle voice drifted into his ears. "Your Majesty, you slept soundly all afternoon. Master Ling Zan said it was a good thing. The rituals are best performed with a sincere heart, so I hesitated to disturb your slumber. How is your Majesty feeling now? Would you like some dinner?" The emperor rubbed his forehead. He felt a lingering grogginess, as if he'd yet to recover from the afternoon's vision, but he was in somewhat better spirits after his rest. He murmured in affirmation, and Hizong quickly jogged out. He returned with a group of monks carrying all sorts of vegetarian dishes. "Today feels colder than yesterday," the emperor ventured. "Yes, it's snowing outside." Hizong fetched a cloak and draped it over him. Tell the kitchen to prepare some warming ginger soup and have it sent to Yu Qingzi and the soldiers. Hizong bowed in acknowledgement and smiled. "You're very considerate, Your Majesty. This humble servant never thought of doing that." He ordered a young eunuch to stay behind while he busied himself with the emperor's orders. The emperor casually picked some scriptures from a nearby bookshelf, reading as he ate. A deafening roar echoed in the distance, the muted growl of rolling thunder. Snow and thunder at the same time. Startled, the emperor turned to look outside, his pleasant mood vanishing in an instant. He'd encountered thunder during snowfall once in his youth, and felt no sense of foreboding at the time. But considering the series of strange occurrences over the past few days, even the slightest abnormality set his heart racing. After today's horrifying events, he was paranoid and jumping at shadows, echoing after clap as the snowflakes drifted down. He knew he wouldn't be the only one disturbed. First the eclipse, now a thunderstorm in winter. The common folk would also start to entertain wild ideas about omens. Unsettled, he could no longer focus on the scriptures. He dropped the book on the desk. "Come," he said to the eunuch. "Let us go for a walk." He would call on Master Ling Zan. Right now, the abbot was the only one who could understand him, the only one who could bring him hope. The clever young eunuch understood at once. He hurried out, questioning monks along the way until he was told that Master Ling Zan was still in the main hall, then returned to lead the emperor there. As the night settled over the city, Da Xingshan Temple fell into a deep and unnerving silence. Guards patrolled the grounds, and torches cast a flickering light against the stone walls. Ancient trees thronged outside, their branches cloaking the path that had been tranquil during the day in thick and eerie shadows. Perhaps it was the drop in temperature, or perhaps the sinister scenery. A shiver went up the young eunuch's spine. He dared not rub his arms with the emperor nearby, but he could feel the fine hairs on his body standing on end. At last they approached the main hall. Bright light spilled from the cracks in the tightly shut doors and windows. On a blizzard-filled night like this, leaving the doors open would only extinguish the candles. The young eunuch was about to step forward to announce the emperor's presence when the emperor held up a hand. He took a few steps forward himself and pushed the door open a crack. It was late at night, yet Master Ling Zan was still in the hall. The emperor didn't wish to disturb him if he was attending to important matters. Master Ling Zan is going to be dead. Potentially kneeling, like killed where he's sitting in a very gruesome way. This is my bet. Master Ling Zan was indeed in the main hall. Though the hall was lit by bright candlelight, the abbot was the only one there. He sat cross-legged on the floor with a basin placed before him. The vessel was wide and shallow, like the paper basin funerary rites. But this was what caught the emperor's attention. He glimpsed something far more. Mr. Ling scooped up gore and full, his head as he shoved them into his mouth and chewed. Blood dribbled from the corners of his lips. The emperor paused and licked the blood from his hands as if he hadn't had enough. The emperor's mind went blank. Was he still trapped in his nightmares? He staggered back a few steps, then his legs gave out and he fell to the ground. The young eunuch dove to help him, but he was dragged down as well. Your Majesty! What's wrong? Your Majesty! Through the narrow crack in the door, he saw Master Ling's head turn toward him. A twisted grin split his blood-smeared face. Trembling in fear, the emperor forced a cry past his frozen throat. Help! Someone! Come quickly! As his voice rang out, the sounds of shouts and the distant clash of swords rose from the direction of the monks' quarters by the back courtyard. The emperor whipped his head around. What's happening? Protect his Majesty! The cry went up as the imperial guards around the main hall gathered swiftly before him. The emperor finally felt some small measure of relief. Xiaoyang, he ordered the captain, go find out what's going on. He paused, then pointed at the hall. And there! Go in and bring out Master Ling Zan. The guards dispersed, leaving a small group clustered around the emperor, scanning their surroundings with wary expressions. Something terrible had happened. But the emperor wasn't worried yet. Yu Qingzi and the others were still present. These were men who'd fought their way out of the battlefield. Famous generals who had slaughtered petty causing here were no match for them. But just as the thought occurred to him, the guards surrounding the emperor suddenly cried out and tumbled to the ground. Before the emperor could react, just as the thought occurred to him, the guards surrounding the emperor suddenly cried out and tumbled to the ground. Before the emperor could react, two black him in the hall. Are you thinking this is real, where the act is eating if he's not? But that would just be me. I see we're having another connection issue, so we're just gonna restart this because we're at a new chapter anyway. Stay here. There we go. Unfortunately, I was kind of expecting this. We're having a lot of my area. So this might be the theme tonight. But we'll see. Hi, Esper Lady. We've only so we've gotten through one chapter and we've had some streaming issues because I've got storms in the area. But that's okay because we're going to get through this anyway. But yes. Okay. Where did my pen go? All right. 38:45. That's okay. All right. Chapter 182. The men bound the emperor's hands and pushed him through the doors. What awaited him wasn't the brightly lit interior, nor Mr. Ling Zhang's terrifying and blood-splattered visage. The doors and windows had been flung open, and a blustering wind gutted in, snuffing out the rows of candles. A layer of black fabric was pulled roughly over his eyes, and the world went dark. Even the sounds of fighting faded away as he fled along. Last, nothing. What was happening? After calling out for his men twice to no avail, he realized with a cold finality that he was completely at the enemy's mercy. He tamped down his fear and panic, silently clenching his teeth to stop himself from crying out. Suddenly he felt his arms being released. He yanked off the blindfold, but found himself alone, again greeted by a vast expanse of darkness. He looked around, completely lost. The darkness concealed everything. He had no idea where he was. A thin whine echoed in his ears, faint and indistinct, like the cries of wronged souls drifting from beyond the gates of the underworld. The sound was chilling, awakening sorrow and terror in the deepest parts of his heart. The Emperor made no attempt to move forward. Considering his current plight, remaining still was the wisest course of action. If the enemy had laid traps in the dark, stumbling around might put him in grave danger. Until the enemy made a move, he wouldn't make one either. The Emperor could hear his own breathing. Even his heartbeat seemed deafening. His heart pounded faster and faster, his eardrums pulsed in time. He tried to swallow, but found his mouth parched. This silent torture seemed to go on without end, until even the Emperor's considerable patience reached its limits. Just as he was about to break down and speak, someone blew lightly on the nape of his neck. A gentle sigh behind him. God, that'd be creepy. That'd be so creepy. You're in this darkness. You're already freaked out. You're completely alone. You don't know what's going on. You can hear your heartbeat. You feel your heartbeat. You're doing something. Someone just breathes on the back of your neck. And you know, like, purposely creepy. I'm going to blow on the back of your neck just where you're trying to mess with somebody. That's so not cool. So not cool. This is the Emperor. He's stuck in the dark. The Emperor froze. What kind of monster are you? If you bear me some grudge, face me directly. These tricks are the tactics of a petty villain. They deserve only ridicule, he snapped. Your Majesty's unwavering composure in the face of danger is truly admirable. The stranger's voice was soft and slow, a stark contrast to the Emperor's harsh and hurried scolding. Though there was still no light, he seemed capable of perceiving the Emperor's every movement. The emperor attempted to shift away, but found himself frozen in place. He steadied himself. "Who are you?" The stranger didn't beat around the bush. "Xiao Le, the pavilion leader of the 13 floors of Yunhai." Though the emperor's voice held a note of surprise, this wasn't wholly unexpected. "I'm sure your majesties, my name for both Feng Xiao and Chu." Xiao Lu then snapped his fingers. A point of light flared to life in front of the emperor. It gradually expanded into a glowing mass, then split into several scattered clusters that darted to the edges of the space. In the faint light, the emperor's surroundings began to take shape. Xiao Le stood before him with a girl at his side. The pavilion leader of the 13 floors of Yunhai was young and handsome, and the girl was lovely. Standing together, this pair seemed a perfect match. It was difficult to imagine this young man, with his gentle face and a smile curving his lips, had amassed such immense power in the last few years. He'd skillfully gathered matters and forged alliances with the Southern Dynasty, Gokturks, and even Goguryeo. While he'd yet pose a significant threat to dynasty, become a thorn in their side, both in the shadows and out in the open. 100% with that in their side, both in the shadows and out in the open. 100% whole shit like that. But yes. But the girl's face was one the emperor couldn't have been more familiar with. And in preparation for his daughter, Princess Li Ping, the emperor had been careful not to mistreat the girl. Who could have imagined she'd been secretly conspiring with the 13 floors, plotting to overthrow the Su dynasty from behind her mother's skirts? The girl smiled. "My name is Yuan Yihuan, your majesty. I'm sure you know this as well. All those years ago, the princess gave birth to twin daughters." The emperor understood at once. "You were the child who died." "You didn't die." Yuan nodded. "Fortunately, my foster brother came to my rescue, or become a vengeful ghost, wander the underworld. It was not a ghost in reason to her." The emperor felt guilt toward the Yuan clan, but the feeling did not extend to become a vengeful ghost, wander the underworld. It was not. Okay, so I'm gonna have my dad reset the route, but should be back from. But yes, Your Majesty lives up to your reputation," said Xiao Le with a smile. "You immediately switch from defensive to offensive, trying to win over. Is Your Majesty truly willing for me what I desire?" The trap within his words, but what virtue does the Emperor of Southern Chen possess? "His ancestors possessed virtue," said the Emperor coolly. "Without virtue, talent, and timing, how else could they have attained the throne? Once they are on the throne, if they don't continue cultivating virtue, the blessing of heaven won't last for long. Your Majesty claims to be talented and virtuous about you for a while," said the Emperor. "Your achievements are sufficient to place you among the visionaries and great men. You gathered a group of talented individuals and proved you have the ability to lead them. Why not apply your prodigious talents to righteous pursuits? Why insist on these shadowy, underhanded schemes?" Yang Jian had been born a wealthy member of the nobility. He could have lived a life of comfort and luxury, but he nursed grand ambitions. Between his own aspirations and Emperor Wu's suspicion toward him, he gradually found himself walking down the path of usurpation, unable to retreat. But since his ascension, he'd governed with wisdom and benevolence, ensuring peace both within and without his nation, and reforming the previous dynasty's failed policies. While he might have wronged the Yuan clan, he'd always done right by the common people. Thus he questioned Xiao Le with confidence. Who decides what is righteous? Xiao Le replied. Those who steal bread to fill their bellies are punished, but those who steal kingdoms to feed their ambitions become lords. That's all there is to it. Why try to provoke me? Asked the emperor solemnly. I acknowledge that I stole the throne from the Yuan family. But if Yuan Yun had governed with sincerity and valued talent, his nation wouldn't have fallen into my hands. The illusions I saw earlier were your doing, were they not? Even if you're unhappy with me, Master Ling Zhang's was innocent. I beseech you to let him go. Fear not, we'd never harm an enlightened monk who's pure of soul, said Shaolu. But it's no use trying to delay, your majesty. Do you know where we are? I did want to ask. We are inside the belly of the Buddha. Where we are? I did want to ask. We are inside the belly of the Buddha. Dangshan Temple's most famous feature was its Mahavira Hall. Inside was a gigantic Buddha statue over 50 feet tall, cast during the Jin dynasty. It had narrowly escaped destruction during Emperor Wu's reign, and after Yang Jian ascended, he'd renovated the temple and had the statue gilded. The emperor had previously admired the statue from up close, but he'd never realized its hollow interior was so vast, or even that it was accessible. Is that better with the quality of the stream? I'm just wondering. Everybody back? If Shaolu and Yuan Yihuan had been hiding within the statue, it was no surprise they had been overlooked despite security and thorough searches both inside and outside the temple. The Emperor considered further. If Shaolu and Yuan had entered from inside, that there was a passage beneath the Emperor considered further. If Shaolu and Yuan had entered from inside, that one entered from inside, that there was a passage beneath. Sandalwood incense is a strong scent. Once my incense mingled with it, it was hard to detect. All right, fingers crossed. Okay, all right, let's do this again. At this point, there was no more need to hide anything. The Gyu was in the ginger soup. As I'm sure you've guessed, there are a number of secret passageways hidden beneath these Buddha statues. I had men light a hallucination-inducing incense within them, which wafted out through the openings in the statues. Sandalwood incense is a strong scent. Once my incense mingled with it, it was hard to detect. The Emperor's expression darkened. So you made Master Ling Zhang do those awful deeds with this incense? Xiao Lu smiled. Everything you saw was an illusion. Zhang is devoted to the impermanence of Buddhism. His heart beats and bears no shadow. The incense is useless on him. All I did was induce him to lie down and rest quietly for a while. After all, my true target was you, Your Majesty. He turned his head and called into the darkness. Are you ready? The Emperor instinctively followed his eyes wide. A figure stepped forth from, Do you think you can delay, Your Majesty? So this was how This was why Xiao Le had so patiently entertained his questions. The impostor had watched everything, observing the subtle nuances of his voice and expressions. "Almost there," the impostor said. "Please let him speak a few more words, pavilion leader." His voice sounded like it had come from the Emperor's own lips. The Emperor burned with fury. He never expected his enemy to have this card up his sleeve. "You only have yourself to blame, Your Majesty." Xiaolu's voice was laden with regret. "Your security is too tight. Every time my men tried to infiltrate the palace, they were identified by the Jijian Bureau. I had no choice but to resort to more unconventional methods. Rest assured, once this man takes your place, he'll issue an edict saying you're advocating and make arrangements for the rest of the Yang clan. Your esteemed name will remain untarnished. The history books will still call your Majesty a wise emperor who established the imperial examinations and subdued the Gok Turks." The emperor had resolved not to say another word, but at this he couldn't contain himself. "Who will believe this impostor? Do you take the empress and ministers for fools?" Xiaolu smiled. "The confidants who supported your ascension, such as Liu Fang and Zhang Yi, are already dead. Then there's the solar eclipse, a clear sign that the heavens themselves deem you guilty for usurping the Yuan clan's throne. Your Majesty spent 3 days in repentance at Da Xingshan Temple, then resolved to follow Emperor Wu's example and abdicate to become a monk. What does it matter if the Empress and ministers don't believe it? It only matters what the common folk do. The Prince of Qin is already in contact with the commander of the Imperial Army. Between them, they'll focus on consolidating military power and earning the trust of the people. As for Empress Dugu, it's unfortunate that she's so ill. She should continue to rest." "You're delusional," the Emperor roared. "Enough," said the impostor. He stepped up to the Emperor and reached out to touch his face, stroking it as if trying to work out the structure of his bones. A chill ran down the Emperor's spine. His face filled with horror, but he found himself unable to move. I. The Empire repeated the word, adjusting his tone each time. Slowly he erased the last subtle differences between himself and the original, until they sounded completely identical. And yes, that's probably why they were killed. Yang gave a small smile that chilled the depths of Yang Jian's heart. It's over, he thought in despair. The Buddha statue would muffle all sound within it. No matter how he screamed, no one would come to his rescue. Throughout the ages, death had always been the one inevitability no one could surmount. But the Emperor now realized that what he feared most wasn't the inevitability of his death. It was not knowing what Xiao Le would do with his face and identity when he was gone. In the darkness behind him, a silent hand stretched out. It wasn't the hand of a savior, but that of the Reaper come to claim him. A dark figure rushed forward, ready to strike the fatal acupoint on the Emperor's back. Xiao Lu's smile vanished as he sprang between them. "Stop!" He'd arranged for one to Emperor of Suit. The real one was still useful to him. No intent. Exchanged several blows with the newcomer before he recognized him. "Tuan Xingha! We've never interfered in each other's businesses before. Why are you starting now?" Tuan Xingha said nothing. He pushed Xiao Lu aside and drew his sword, slashing at the Emperor. His saber chi multiplied 1,000-fold as it flew from his blade, rushing toward both the real and fake emperors. Xiao Lu refused to let Tuan Xingha succeed, but he could only save one. What he wanted was a puppet. If he was forced to pick, the impostor was more useful. He darted toward the fake. The Emperor watched helplessly as the saber glare tore toward him. cold and sharp and ready to extinguish his life. His chest ached, as if preemptively feeling the pain. At crucial the solid ground he'd imagined, a deep pit seemed to have materialized out of thin air. The Emperor teetered on the edge for only a breath before plummeting down into the dark. Yet in that brief moment he caught a glimpse of the one who'd rescued him. It was the young monk he'd seen beside Master Ling Zhang. I practically became a monk. I practically became a Buddha myself with how long my venerable self waited for you people to show yourself. The monk laughed heartily, instantly giving away his identity. Ha 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 ha! Xiao Le and Qing He engaged in ferocious combat, but the moment Feng Xiao appeared, they set aside their fight and flew. Oh, good night, Truffle. I'm sorry. No worries, Truffle. Chapter 183. Feng Xiao hadn't tossed the Emperor into a hole for no reason. He knew the alliance between Xiao Le and Ku Hizhen was tenuous. They were united by their shared desire to overthrow the Su dynasty, yet the closer they came to their goal, the more unstable their relationship would become. Their partnership would become. This was an opening he could exploit. One side might easily turn on the other, or they might not. But Feng Xiao's faction was exposed out in the open. Any move they made would be observed. All he could do was wait. During their initial initiative, they should search the city and cancel the Buddhist ceremony, not sit on their hands and pray for their enemies to destroy each other. Ultimately, it was Chupa Chu who commanded everyone to lie low and refrain from taking reckless action. After the incident at the Prince of Qin's banquet, the Jijian Bureau had discovered several key clues to the case. They acted as if they found nothing and put on a show of being confused and panicked in order to coax the enemy into letting down their guard. Until today. Chupa Chu's grasp of human nature, Feng Xiao's thought, was indeed unmatched. Tuan Qinghe and Xiao Le might not have made names for themselves in the Jianghu, but they were undoubtedly peerless martial artists. Xiao Le's injuries had yet to heal, which put him at a slight disadvantage, but if he and Tuan Qinghe worked together, even the arrogant Feng Xiao dared not claim he could achieve a decisive victory. The imposter emperor thus became the key. The imposter was crucial to Xiao's plan. He couldn't let it happen to him. The moment the imposter was thrown into the pit, Xiao Le abandoned Feng Xiao and rushed forward to rescue him. Oh, is this like one of those where it's like, I'm the emperor? No, I am! The emperor had never still crushed under the weight of the fake emperor. He groped the muddy ground beneath him. The soil was tightly packed, almost certainly the work of some bygone construction project. As far as the emperor could recall, Da Xingxian Temple had undergone renovations twice. Once before Emperor Wu banned Buddhism, and once after, again, Great Su's establishment. But both had concerned only the buildings on the surface, reinforcing the temple without delving down into the foundations. These packed earth passages had to be older than the Shou dynasty. He shoved the body on top of him aside and struggled up. The man seemed to have passed out. Even in the dark, the emperor could tell this was the fake, but he couldn't make out the man's true identity. His first thought was to kill him, but he had no weapon to hand, and he was exhausted. All he managed was a couple dull kicks. The emperor panted harshly, his anger still simmering. How was he supposed to escape this place? Could Feng Xiao extricate himself and save him? What was even happening up there? His mind was in a fog. There was too much he didn't know. He waited a long time, but no one else dropped from above. He had no choice but to take matters into his own hands. Using the wall to support himself, the emperor straightened with great effort and began to slide himself along the rugged stone. He groped along for a while before noticing something. When he paused to carefully explore the wall a second time, he realized that what he'd touched wasn't merely rough earth. It was a carved mural. By touch alone, he guessed it depicted galloping horses. Some people were leading them, while several others stood with cupped hands. Bodhisattva sat upon a throne of lotus flowers. This is no construction tunnel. This, of course, is a labyrinth. The emperor knew a fair amount about Daxing Temple thanks to his friendship with Meng Zhang, but he'd never known there was a maze like this underneath. If it stretched out under the entire temple complex, the labyrinth was massive and was probably riddled with traps and dangers. Cold sweat sprang up on the emperor's back. Perhaps it would be more prudent to go back above ground and confront Xiao, but he didn't know the way back, and there was no guarantee anyone would come to rescue him. A familiar sound echoed around him, coming in starts and stops from all directions at once. It resembled the wail of an infant or the howl of a wild cat, filled with deep resentment and boundless hatred. The emperor froze, struggling to discern the source of the noise. A hand landed gently on his shoulder. Man, they're pulling out all the horror tropes. It's like someone breathing behind you. There's a hand on your shoulder, and it's not your friend's hand, just a hand. My goodness. All the blood from his head as he twisted away, trying to shake off the hand gripping him. A voice cut through the dark. One. Chu! The emperor's heart was pounding so fiercely that when he tried to speak, he also choked and began to cough. The sound echoed in the darkness. How big is this place? The emperor wondered. Another voice rang out. Your Majesty. This was a familiar voice as well. The deputy chief of the Zhuoyue Bureau, Zhang Sun Bodhi. The emperor calmed his racing heart and gasped. They... In an incredible breach of propriety, Zhang Sun Bodhi clapped his hand over the emperor's mouth, cutting him off mid-word. All right, that's pretty shameless. So that is actually going to go here. 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 45. We're at 145. Pretty shameless. There's a monster in here, Your Majesty. It's best to speak as little as possible, Chubuchu said in a low voice. The emperor's heart leapt into his throat once more. What kind of monster? How did you get down here? In fact, before the ceremony, Chubuchu had instructed Qin Miaoyu and Ming Yue to enter the palace and search the library for Daxing Temple's building plans. The palace library housed a vast collection of books, some as old as the Han Dynasty. Though many of the older scrolls had been lost to various wars, a sizable number survived. Locating plans for a 300-year-old temple in a single night was no simple task. But Ming Yue and Qin Miaoyu had succeeded, locating the plans of the temple amid a pile of old papers. They weren't the originals from the Jin Dynasty, which had presumably been lost sometime during the wars, and the Jin Dynasty's moved south. The earliest preserved versions were from the later Qin Dynasty and detailed the temple's construction history and agricultural design. As Daxing Temple had been renovated several times since then, these preserved plans differed greatly from the temple now knew it. Qin Miaoyu had understood why Chubuchu went to such lengths to acquire the plans. She thought he was grasping at straws. until he put out into such lengths to acquire the prince. She thought he was grasping at straws, until he put out night above and below. Chibuchu knew the emperor would be in the Mahavira hall during the morning and afternoon ceremonies. He'd be listening to sutras and engaged in worship, while his attendants and ministers stood to the side praying and offering incense. Shaolu's attention was sure to be completely focused on the emperor during this time. Thus, earlier in the day, he had brought Zhang and the others to quietly search the area around the temple. All their efforts paid off when they discovered a hidden tunnel beneath a pile of debris in a narrow alley bordering Jingshan Ward. There were several layers of earth beneath the bricks. The passage hadn't been used recently. It seemed Shaolu's faction hadn't noticed it at all. Upon entering, they discovered that the labyrinth below was just as expansive as Daxingshan Temple above. It is a series of branching connections arranged according to the Baguides held a chest containing the sarira of a high monk from the past. All manner of venomous creatures surrounded these precious chests, guarding the treasures within. Chibuchu and Zangsun Bodhi plunged into the labyrinth and navigated the various obstacles together. Between them, thanks to both Chibuchu's expertise in arrays and mechanisms, as well as Zangsun Bodhi's martial prowess, they managed to evade all the traps and reach the Emperor. But the Emperor no longer remembered where he'd fallen down, and now there was an even greater danger skulking nearby. A monster glowering at them from the darkness, ready to pounce and tear into its prey. "We are not sure what kind of creature it is, only that it's dangerous," said Chibuchu. "It's bizarre yet intelligent. Even Zangsun was not its match. We fled from it. We must prevent it from finding us again." Zangsun bit his lip but said nothing. Chibuchu's description was cryptic. He hadn't told the Emperor that the creature wasn't just ferocious. Its appearance horrifying. Even Zangsun had no desire to recall what he'd seen. He was acutely aware of the greater danger that they were in and less confident than ever that he could bring them all out to safety. I wonder if it's one of the man-faced monkeys. Like, that was the original purpose of the man-faced monkeys in the city, correct? They were there to guard the treasure and guard the city and 1,000 Autumns. So I wonder if they brought those monkeys to guard the temple. Uh, 1745. Okay. Chapter 184. After listening to their explanation, he gathered his thoughts and forced himself to breathe deeply. Moments ago, he'd been isolated and surrounded by enemies. At least now, he had two companions by his side. Following their lead, he lowered his voice to a whisper. "What Shang?" Another emperor might have balked at taking commands from his subjects. But Yang Jian was under no illusions. It would be impossible to escape by himself. Zhang Sun may have been the martial artist among them, but the one he trusted most was still Chibuchu. Chibuchu, too, dispensed with the usual courtesies. "Your Majesty, can you remember how you got here?" The Emperor flushed. He'd been in such a panic after falling, it hadn't occurred to him to make note of his route. He'd been in such a panic after falling, it hadn't occurred to him to make note of his route. "Let me excellent memory." Back over the stone walls he'd touched, he said, "Follow me." Zhang Sun lit no fire, lest it draw attention of eyes within the darkness. Instead, he placed his hand on the Emperor's arm to guide him. Chibuchu followed a step behind. The Emperor felt along the carvings, recalling the mural he'd found. Men on horse and camel back rode from far and wide to pay their respects to the Bodhisattva, who sat high on a throne of lotuses. The Bodhisattva's fingers were bent in a mudra, their pose exuding an air of untouchable serenity. Auspicious clouds were depicted in the mural. The emperor's fingers quickly found their stylized whorls, and above the clouds was the Bodhisattva he recalled. Now more confident, he pushed forward. There was a man impersonating me. He was unconscious just up ahead. Sir, your majesty, let me check. Zhang Sun Bodhi left the emperor to Chubachu, who put a hand on his shoulder and strode toward the spot the emperor had indicated. There's no one here, your majesty. How could that be? The emperor couldn't believe it. The impostor had been out cold. How could he have woken so quickly? Even if he had, he should have made some kind of noise that they'd have heard. He took a few involuntary steps forward, as if to verify the impostor's absence himself. Chubachu's hand slipped from his shoulder. Your majesty, there are many hidden passages here. We should stay together, Chubachu cautioned. That man mimicked my voice and appearance so flawlessly even I might have mistaken him for myself. If he escapes, it will spell trouble. The emperor bent and began to search his surroundings, but found nothing under his fingers beyond coarse sand and stone. He furrowed his brow. Impossible. He distinctly remembered the impostor emperor falling and landing on top of him. He'd impostor away, and his head had struck the stone wall. He'd probably bled. The faint scent of blood did linger in the air. The emperor searched again and felt a small damp patch. So this was the place. But then where was the fake emperor? He must be nearby, the emperor muttered. Perhaps he'd woken days. Saying soon. How could this be? Just moments ago, Chubuchu and Zhang Sun had a few steps behind him. They couldn't have failed to hear him. He thrust his hands out again and felt something warm. It felt like a bare human foot, the skin rough and craggy as scales. Drip, drip. Water fell from above and dropped onto the emperor's forehead. He reached up, thinking away. His face came away sticky, stinking of copper. Not blood. Not blood. Wind rushed past his ear. Light flared behind him. The emperor turned to see Zhang Sun hold a torch. He stood and realized and slowly circled. The creature had humans, but its hair was completely gone. Its face, scalp, and shiny and swollen as if scalded with boiling water. Scalded. Which black white where eyes had once sided, there were only two hollow pockets filled with flickering black flame. Its limbs were covered in scales, and its nails were long, blackened, and extraordinarily sharp. The monster stared at the emperor, who... I mean, I'd freeze too if I came up against that. Like, that sounds horrifying. All the hair on his neck shook. All he managed was a wordless gasp. The emperor thought he'd seen it all. He never imagined a creature like this could exist. No wonder soon and Chu'd Dick could maintain composure before such a sight. Belatedly, the emperor realized his hand was still resting on the monster's foot. His soul almost fled his body in terror, and he yanked his head back. The monster growled deep in its throat and lunged. It moved as fast as lightning, swiping its sharp nails at the crown of the emperor's head. gust of rancid wind swept toward the emperor. He had no time to evade. He was going to die. The thought had barely formed when flames erupted between him and the monster. Zhang Yun had thrown the torch, the emperor stunned. The monster recoiled in pain as the torch took its head. Life! Zhang Yun shouted. Chu Chu was nowhere to be seen. Zhang could have. The emperor postured himself on the wall of the move and out again Chu Chu. There was no response. The monster fought sadly. Soon was forced to expend more and energy to block each strike. Suddenly, he realized the creature was its own cunning. It had lured them in the depths of the labyrinth, and now it sought to exhaust it. Couldn't stall any longer. Okay, I apologize how rough the stream has been tonight, but we are going to get through this. We are so close. Chu stood in silence with his back to the stone wall. He could feel the contours of stone carving through his clothing. It was a depiction of a Buddhist tale. The looked. The face of the person choking him was inches from his own. His breath was light. The warm air and over Chu's. His breath was light. The he struck Chu Chu's acupoint, rendering him immobile. We meet again, Chief Chu. It's a pleasure, very close companions, old friends reunited apart. There was no hint of animosity, but Chu Chu guessed that if it were up to Xiao Le, he would have come down here. It seemed that Zhao, throwing the fake emperor down, had forced his hand. Chu Chu could vaguely doubt the man. Xiao Le was still in the mood to joke. Chief Chu, you overestimate me. The underground labyrinth was built to house the 8 treasures. Booby traps and various poison make sense. That creature doesn't. That thing is no beast. It's a living person who's been cast in a pool of. After 40 days, it was perforated and the eroded took control of their body. Now they're alive. All right, I reset it completely. So hopefully this means it'll be better. Xiao Le was silent a moment. That human Gu was once the head disciple of the Nanhua sect, Song Yu Chai. Chu was stunned. Kuhi Zen had only been in the Central Plains for a few months. Song Yun Tai has been missing for over 3 years. How did he fall into a Gokturk hands? Xiao Lu sighed. At the time, the Nanhuan sect was embroiled in strife. The sect leader remarried a beautiful young woman, fell in love with the head disciple, Song Yu Tao. The leader and his wife clashed, and the sect was fragmented. Alone, Yun Tao set out the Great Wall to search for Shifu. More was heard from him. A terrible pity. He had great potential. Could have realized what fate lacked him, and he perished. Were you involved with this, Pavilion Leader Xiao? If I said I wasn't, believe me. Liar. Xiao, only you will unite Ashina. Chubachu needed only a moment recall everything connected to the name. The Empress. Correct. 15 years ago, the daughter of Muquan Kagan, Lady Shina and Yang. The Gokta Buddha Lady had accepted time order down on religion. He took monks from the country and he destroyed several sections of Dashingshan Temple. It was the last that led to the discovery of the entrance to the labyrinth. Upon learning of it, Lady Ashina had ordered an investigation, but Kuzen clearly operating on the same principle. To him, there was no difference between Xiao Li and the Emperor of Su. For men, he could use to further his plans of sowing discord in the Central Plains. Well then, Pavilion Leader Xiao were in the same boat. It'd be wise to cooperate, at least we're out of the labyrinth. Xiao smiled. Please go ahead. Do you know the way? I don't, said Xiao Li. Hu Zhen showed me the plans. I must trouble you to guide me. Oh my god. That's a spider. Right, well that's the well, I'm glad that I looked a moment so I didn't get a spider in my hair. That was unpleasant. But anyway, do you know the way? I don't, said Shala. Kuhiza never showed me the plans. I must trouble you to guide me. Who didn't answer. He immediately started. Shala had tapped the fake emperor's acupoint earlier. He lifted the silent man easily to his feet and followed close behind Chubuchu. The path was deep and dark, the only sound the tap of their footsteps. The fake emperor, still dazed, stumbled as he walked, his footfalls unpleasantly discordant. The fake emperor was a crucial part of his plan. Xiaolu's treatment of him made it clear how little regard he had for him. This impostor couldn't be a high-ranking member of the 13 floors. Perhaps really only a puppet. What a puppet thought or felt about Xiaolu was of no concern to him. It need only to fill its role. As one, central stone pillar brilliantly torchlit, white jade shimmering, ethereal and glow. Chubuchu an imperial step closer. The fake emperor, similar, staggered, moving faster than Chu as he reached out to touch it. Even Shu almost himself. He took one step forward, then another. Just as he took his third, he halted in alarm. He closed his eyes against the light. But somehow the tower, causing restraint, was weak. There was something wrong with this tower. He slammed his eyes shut. Chubuchu's torch was guttering out, flame flickering. The wavering torchlight, the white jade tower, seemed to emit a glow, eerie, surreal. Get! Chubuchu cried. The torch out, everything was plunged into darkness. Xiaolu had the use of both hands, but he could only use. Xiaolu yanked Chu backward. By then, it was too late for the fake emperor. Chubuchu also reacted swiftly. As soon as Xiaolu pulled him into his arms, he whipped out another torch and lit it. The torch hissed and illuminating the emperor. He was bound to the tower, countless regrets, at least 7 or 8, coiled around head and neck, digging flesh swiftly. That blood they watched. The threads the Emperor's bulged final time and death. Xiao Lu and Chu stopped in. They were neither sheltered nor naive. Both had witnessed countless horrors, yet the death of the impostor was beyond their comprehension. Xiao Lu pulled on fragrance. Even a true martial expert would struggle to escape its effects, let alone Xiao Lu's fake emperor. Chu had been close to the tower as well. If not for Xiao Lu's time bug, he likely would have escaped. Chu begged to examine the tower. Did. He revamped the place. Xiao Lu pushed his fingers over the impostor. How is he? Asked Chu. Beyond safe, said Xiao Lu slowly. With the fake emperor dead, Xiao Lu's plan had already partially failed. Chu should have felt victorious, but seeing as they were trapped here with no guarantee of making it out alive, it would be wise not to provoke Xiao Lu much. Xiao Lu wouldn't feel the human became angry. She coughed, said with faint sympathy. At peace. The corner of his mouth twitched. Would have been convenient if you. It's craziness, but persevere. Was even worse. More, the fall had aggravated his symptoms, and to cough and stop, the taste of metal surging his throat. He spat out mouthfuls of blood. The only sound in the darkness was harsh panting, both his own and Xiao Lu's. Chu, unable to pull himself up, on his companion. A long while I heard Xiao Lu say calmly, "You're dying." He wasn't mocking or cursing Chu. He could hear it in his breathing. Chu's chest heaved as if he was trying and failing to draw all the air he could into his body. His lungs, his organs that were burning up, but the scant bit of life left in him. He'd been born with a fragile body, and his ailments had been aggravated by his circumstances. By all rights, Chu should have died long ago. Yet he had insisted on dragging his sickly body along the boundary between life and death, barring a full 30 years of life from the heavens. But what was borrowed must one day be paid. And for this man who defied fate, the price was unbearable, bone-rending agony. Xiao Lu understood he had spent those years in perpetual suffering. He had never known a day of peace. Even on his days, the chill age. What could you go through this torment? This Xiao Lu didn't understand. Chu doing this question he had always wanted Chu to answer. After all, their situations were almost identical, to the point that even now they appeared as eerie mirrors of each other. When Chu replied, his voice was very quiet. I know. Had it not been for Xiao Lu's extraordinary hearing, he might have missed those words within the stillness of the cave. Chu succumbed to another long fit of coughing. Xiao Lu could almost picture him, hunched over, the coughs racking his body as though he was about to expel his very heart and lungs through his mouth. Chu's life was like a guttering candle flame, poised to extinguish itself at any moment. Occasionally it flared brighter, but that was merely a fleeting illusion, a final blinding spark before inevitable death. Unless heaven granted him some miracle, but That was some miracle, but that one is next, struggling against the searing pain in his chest as he clung to consciousness. Within the vast expanse of darkness and treachery, one person rose in his mind's eye. All right, we finally have a picture. And what a picture it is! We get all of his suffering. Man is going through it. Even dying, he's pretty. Alright. Still with me, lady? I know it's been a rough one tonight. Thanks to this man, Chupachu had discovered the true meaning of living in the sunlight. Every time he drew near, Chupachu felt a step closer to the exhilarating world of life, even if that man was neither gentle nor kind and challenged him every turn. He often found himself diverting his attention to deal with the traps this man set for him. It was a constant irritation, yet it breathed life into his days. Of course, he'd never share these thoughts with him. That man would spend the rest of his life gloating and rubbing it in his face. For the sake of his ears, it was better to say nothing. He didn't know how long he drifted like this until the pain subsided enough for him to prop himself on his elbows. He laboriously pulled out a torch and lit it. In the dim light, all he could see clearly was the ground beneath them, riddled with deep cracks. At first glance, it appeared the earth had fractured in some violent tremor, but a closer look revealed a more sinister origin. The cracks seemed alive, overlapping and swirling, in an unending pattern. Even a brief glimpse left him dizzy and on the verge of collapse in his current state. He steadied himself, did his eyes. He could barely hold himself up as it was. There's an array on the ground. He coughed again. How much do you know about the labyrinth? Xiao Lu respond. It struck Chupachu that Xiao Lu had been silent for some time now. Xiao Lu? Came a low grunt. Chupachu frowned. Are you all right? If something happened, it would be even harder to escape. I've been poisoned. Xiao sigh. What was that? Floated. What was that? Floated over so light, Chupachu at first suspected he was lying. He paused. How were you poisoned? When we fell, there was poison on the walls. If you doubt me, look for yourself. Chupachu was silent. What? Xiao Lu laughed. You still think I'm lying to you at a time like this? You know I'm dying, said Chupachu flatly, taking all of strength to talk to you. Xiao Lu sighed once more. Slowly he rose to his feet and approached Chupachu. He had fallen a little distance apart. He trod carefully, feeling his way forward with each step. A sharp hiss erupted on the ground. Chupachu raised his torch to see no problem for Xiao Lu. Yet Chupachu could see a sluggishness to his movements, which were nowhere near as fluid as before. Xiao Lu evaded the spikes by a hair's breadth, narrowly avoiding being turned into a meat skewer. He arrived at Chupachu's side and slowly settled down on the floor. His breathing was labored and shallow. He stretched out his hand. In the flickering light, Chupachu could see the red and purple splotches on Xiao Lu's palm. Some were already beginning to turn black. It's a fast-acting poison, my goodness. And Chubachu suddenly recalled how Xiao Le had pulled him away from the jade pillar. When they had fallen, he must have pushed off the wall with his palm. Why didn't you expel the poison? Xiao Le sighed. Because I've already suffering from another deep poison. He used his blackened hand to roll up the sleeve of his other arm. A shriveled wrinkled and as slender as a chopstick. Though Chuchu had seen it before, it sent a chill down his spine. An arm like that shouldn't belong to a living person, especially not a man like Xiao Le. But that wasn't what Xiao Le wanted to show him. He continued to roll up his sleeve. Where his withered arm gradually thickened and transitioned to healthy flesh, the skin was tinged a sickly purple-black. What is it? The poison I was born with. Martial training kept it suppressed over years, but during my last fight with Feng Zhao, I sustained severe injuries and almost a chi deviation. I must have sensed my injuries have yet to fully heal. My martial arts skills have only recovered around 6 or 10ths of their original state. I can no longer suppress. The first poison had already begun to spread, and now Xiao Le had been exposed to another. It was remarkable he had avoided the spikes at all. What's the worst-case scenario? Xiao Le smiled. This is the worst-case scenario. There's only one road available to me. Death. You could have chosen not to create this mess and concentrated on recovering instead, said Chubuchu coldly. It's too late for that, said Xiao Le. After my seclusion failed, I had no illusions about the condition I was in. I couldn't break through in my martial arts, and the poison had already spread. I couldn't advance any further. No matter what I do, only death awaits me now. The best I can do is make sure my years of planning come to fruition before I pass away. I can fulfill my lifelong wish. Chubuchu sneered. Your lifelong wish is to harm others. Xiao Le began to cough. Perhaps the poison was acting up. He didn't respond to Chubuchu, but instead closed his eyes and began meditating to regulate his breathing. Chubuchu tossed him a porcelain vial, which he caught with a steady hand. Ice fungus pills, said Chubuchu. They'll slow the spread of your poison. If you doubt me, you don't have to take them. Xiao Le opened the vial, sniffed its contents, and tilted his head back, emptying all the pills into his mouth. They were in the same boat. There was no reason to suspect each other. Soon enough, it did feel stronger. Your medicine is quite effective. Enough. Let's get out of here. Xiao Le took the torch from his hand and pulled a long needle. He pierced the slim torch with it, then tossed it into the darkness. The arced air with the torch attached, and embedded itself in the stone. Their faces showed identical expressions of disbelief. Ah, yes. Feng Xiao and Tuan Jinghe had been fighting for nearly half an hour. Neither could kill the other, even in their opponent was proved difficult. Tuan Jinghe had quickly realized Feng Xiao had grown even more fine since the fight. Cheng and he was discomfited. Arts not only a natural talent and a strong nation of training, but on such spontaneous leaps in insight. Even mediocre martial artists struggle to make such significant progress in a few days. Mind martial artists of that caliber. Progressing a step, even half a step, was excruciatingly difficult, and depending on time and half a step was excruciatingly difficult. Yet Feng Xiao had managed it. Either he'd held back during their previous confrontation, or he'd somehow gleaned new insight within the span of a day. How could that be possible? Tuan Qinghe cleared his mind of all distractions. He and Feng Xiao were evenly matched with the same odds of victory. The victor would therefore be determined through sheer strength. Both noticed someone approaching on the periphery of their battle, but neither paid the newcomer any mind. It was Yuan Yihuan, the girl who had been with Xiao Le. Instead of pursuing the false Su emperor alongside Xiao Le, she had chosen to remain. Although their speed made it impossible for her to see them clearly, she watched every move they made rapt. Xiao Le had taught Yuan Yihuan all the martial arts she knew. She was of middling aptitude, but though she could never hope to equal his accomplishments, having an excellent teacher was a great advantage. If she were to wander the Jianghu, she might not climb to the top, but she'd still carve out a place among the upper ranks. She stilled her breathing, minimizing her aura to avoid drawing Feng Xiao's notice. The next time the two palms met, Yihuan saw her chance. She leapt at Feng's back, light flashing from her sleeve. Boy, it's not a. It's been rough, but we've made it through this far. Yuan Yihuan was determined to succeed. The hidden weapon in her sleeve shone with internal energy as it sliced toward the middle of Feng Xiao's back. She was only 3 inches from Feng Xiao when Tuan Qinghe, embroiled in battle with Feng Xiao, suddenly fell back. Yeah, let's go! Thank you, Whisper Lady. Feng Xiao spun and floated up, and the hidden weapon in Yuan Yihuan's sleeve sliced the empty air. Her eyes didn't believe. Won't you use underhanded techniques to my victim? Qinghe's voice echoed in her ears. She ended her attack to evade Xiao's deadly strike. But how could she escape? Sharp pain pierced her back. Yuan Yihuan flew like a kite with its string snapped, crashing heavily to the floor. Tuan Qinghe betrayed my brother. His alliance is with Ku Hizhen, not me. Tuan Qinghe gazed back at her. His eyes were empty of emotion. He looked at her as one might a tree or a stone. Feng Xiao raised his hand for the finishing blow. I know what Ku Hizhen planted beneath the temple, Yuan Yihuan shouted. If you want to save Chubachu, spare my life. Feng Xiao froze. Seizing her chance, she sliced open her brow and shoved a black worm into the bloody wound. She turned and leapt unhesitatingly into the battle, moving so fast even Feng Xiao was a heartbeat behind. He jumped thinkingly after her. Wait! Tuan Qinghe's expression shifted. He hadn't contributed to Ku Hizhen's refashioning of the labyrinth, but he was aware of the effort the prince had put into it. Ku Hizhen had hoped to lure everyone to their death inside. Even their souls would be trapped for all eternity. Tuan Qinghe couldn't bear to watch Feng Xiao go to his death. To him, Feng Xiao, precious thing, a truly worthy opponent. Enemies could be found anywhere, but an opponent like this should be cherished. Wuxi, is that you? I didn't know you had a cousin. By the time he cried out, Feng Xiao had already disappeared from sight. Tuan Qinghe's expression flickered through myriad emotions before settling itself in determination. He leapt after him. The light of the torch had flashed, then faded, revealing an indistinct scene. Not far from Chubachu and Xiao Le was a low bronze dais. Atop it, a bronze pillar crawling with intricate carving stretched toward the ceiling. The torch had flown too fast for them to see much more than that. They'd had time to register only one additional thing. At the foot of the pillar, thousands of bones piled up like small hills. Long since stripped of their original color, they appeared gray and black, shocking in their sheer quantity. Da Xingshan Temple was a site of Buddhist worship. How could there be so many bones here? No matter how extraordinary Kuhizen might be, he couldn't possibly get that many bones in just days. The ground they stood on had been the capital for many dynasties. An ossuary size was inconceivable, unless the labyrinth was older and any of them had imagined. All around the bronze platform, countless cracks snaked across the ground, extending beyond Chu and Xiaolu's feet. This place must have once been an altar of the ancients, Xiaolu hazarded. Maybe it sank due to the ground caving in, or maybe it was built originally underground. Either way, it was lost to time, leaving future generations unaware of its existence. The temple must have been constructed later. Or perhaps the first abbot of the temple knew of its existence and built the temple here to suppress evil through compassion, Chibuchi said. We can speculate later. We need to figure out how to get out of here. Xiaolu smiled wryly. Don't expect too much from me. I'm not much better off than you. I'll be lucky to make it out on my own, let alone bring you with me. Chibuchi coughed. But you are cleverer than most. That's enough. If I go insane in a moment, remember to return me to my senses. All right, said Xiaolu. Chibuchi lit another torch. He pushed down his nausea and dizziness and stared down at the cracks on the ground. The lines radiated outward in ripple-like patterns. Each ring was aligned and none overlapped. The pattern held an allure like shimmering water magnified, drawing the eyes to it again and again. As he watched, cracks began to move like things. They emerged from the ground, a pattern ordering itself until the many figures slowly merged into a familiar object. Although Chuba had encountered only a few times, he knew it well. Shade of Heaven Lake. A world capable of reverting his fate, prolonging his life, legendary. It wasn't impossible. The labyrinth had a history that far predated Da Xingshan Temple. If one of the ancients had hidden a treasure here, perhaps it had remained undiscovered all this time. The translucent stone shimmered with an inner light, green shading toward blue, like the reflection of the starry sky glinting within a tranquil lake. The vibrant glow captivated the eye. Even the most resolute man would struggle to resist the allure of such a wonder. Chubuchu stared intently at the jade of Heck. He closed his eyes, then opened them. His nails bit hard into his palms. Yet the jade did not disappear. It hovered quietly, just within reach. Be alive. And as long as he lived, there was hope. He could continue in the sun's plotting against Pharaoh and glow over his victories. He could protect more people like his mother, those who were kind and vulnerable, because he was Chubuchu, hard-hearted and ruthless. His fingertips were a breath away from the stone. Alarm rose in his heart, a jangling sense of wrongness. Chubuchu couldn't say what prompted it, only that it was like an invisible thread tied around his finger, tugging him to a stop for a brief moment. He bit his tongue, and the sharp tang of blood surged into his mouth, bringing a sudden clarity amid the pain. He realized there was no Jade of Heaven Lake in front of him. His hand hovered before a venomous snake, head reared and staring at him with there was no jade of Heaven Lake in front of him. His hand hovered before a venomous snake, head reared and staring at him with glowing green eyes. Its tongue flickered in and out as it waited for him to deliver himself to its venomous jaws. Chubuchu froze. The snake remained motionless too, as if waiting to see who would falter first. Chubuchu eased a hand into his lapels. Lightning fast, the snake struck. Chubuchu flung out his hand. The snake hissed and twisted away mid-lunge, wary of the realgar powder Chubuchu had thrown. He had made thorough preparations before entering the labyrinth. Both he and Zhang Sun were carrying sachets of realgar, effective at warding off most ordinary snakes and insects. Clearly, the sachet was insufficient against a venomous snake over a century old. Exercising the utmost caution, Chubuchu had tasked Deputy Chief Song Liang Chen with finding a secret formula. It included realgar, mugwort, and cinnabar, pure substances full of yang energy that were perfect for countering yin creatures. The venomous snake slithered off into the darkness and vanished from sight. Peril temporarily averted, Chubuchu lit the torch again and looked around for Xiao Lu. Chubuchu had been caught in danger unawares, yet Xiao Lu hadn't uttered a word of warning. They were sworn nemesis. Xiao Lu would have no issue sitting back and watching him die, but such inaction was exceedingly foolish in their current predicament, and Xiao Lu was no fool. When Chubuchu caught sight of him, his face fell. Xiao Lu was a short distance away. At some point, he descended the bronze dais, was now staring at the central pillar. His head was tilted back, his face filled with longing. The winding pattern on the pillar now became clear. What they had taken for intricate carvings were instead countless snakes coiled around the bronze surface. Some reared and flicked their tongues, while others twined around each other as they slithered in circles. Their scales glinted in the torchlight, sending shivers down Chubuchu's spine. Yet Xiao Lu seemed completely oblivious as he approached the pillar. Xiao Lu! Chubuchu rushed forward and felt his foot sink as he trod on a hidden trigger buried in the fissures on the ground. The air instantly filled with the whistle of arrows. There was nowhere to run or hide. Chubuchu's reactions were too slow to evade. The arrows were inches from them as he grabbed Xiao Lu's arm. The moment he touched him, Xiao Lu shuddered violently and spun, snatching Chubuchu and leaping into the air. Chubuchu's feet left the ground just as the arrow shot through the space he'd occupied a heartbeat ago. They whizzed past, grazing his clothes and shoes. One tore the fabric at his shoulder, missing his skin by a whisper. Xiao Lu released him, and the two collapsed to the ground in an ungainly heap. Xiao Lu's breathing was heavy. It was clear he no longer had the strength to carry Xiao Lu. Carry Chubuchu, not Xiao Lu. He no longer had the strength to carry himself. A few snakes on the pillar died under the rain of arrows nailed to the bronze surface. Others, startled, darted in all directions, including toward Chubuchu and Xiao Lu. There was no time to speak. They struggled to their feet, stumbling as they dashed away. The torch tumbled to the ground, illuminating the cracks below. Chubuchu's eyes widened in realization. "Take me with you, but follow my directions," he cried. Xiao Lu didn't hesitate. He seized Chubuchu's arm, gathered all his energy, and leapt. With the top of his toes against the stone, he dodged the wave of snakes below. Up is Qian, down is Kun. To the upper left, Dun, 10 steps. Kan, 6 steps. Zen, 8 steps. Xiao Lu was a man of wide and varied knowledge. He understood exactly what Chubuchu was doing, calling out directions using the 8 trigrams of the Bagua. Qian, no, not north, It's up! Forward and straight up! The two leapt into the air and landed in a cave concealed in the stone wall. Xiao was completely drained of strength. He pressed himself against the wall with no thought for any potential poison. His brow was drenched in sweat, his face as pale as a ghost. Chu wasn't much better off, but at least he hadn't been the one using true qi only moments before. After taking a moment to recover his strength, Xiao whispered, "How did you know there was a cave here?" The yellow river diagram, Chu said. The array was likely modeled after it. Even if death lies everywhere, where death and life meet, there must be a path out. That's the secret. Closing his eyes, he recalled his vision of the Jade of Heaven Lake. The fissures forming the jade had scattered and rearranged themselves into the shape of this diagram. An ancient cosmological map familiar to anyone who studied geomancy. I saw a hint within the illusion earlier. Those fissures look random, but if you took each out separately and rearranged them, they'd form the Yellow River diagram. Xiao was silent for a moment, then smiled wryly. You're better at arrays than I am. It seems Fan Yun held something back when he taught me. No, said Chu. He treated you the same as he did me. If anything, you had his favor. He taught you more than me, not less, but your heart wasn't in it. Xiao was extraordinarily intelligent and capable, yet he was also ambitious, and ambitious individuals often shared a common flaw. They set their goals unreasonably high. For them, these arts were mere stepping stones. They felt no need to dedicate themselves to such pursuits, so they paid less attention. You're right, Xiao didn't deny. What did you see when you looked at that pillar? Xiao paused. Everything I've ever wanted. Fame, power, an able body. Being born into a prosperous family, climbing the ranks on my own merits, seizing the throne and replacing the Emperor of Chen. Governing across the Yangtze River from your Sioux. Then, finally, achieving my goal of unifying the land. Your obsession runs too deep, said Chu coldly. He had no interest in conversing further. When he felt somewhat recovered, he rose to observe his surroundings. The cave they had landed in was clean, but very small, with hardly any room to move around. One side was open and dropped down to the bronze dais. The remaining 3 sides were solid stone. One in particular was suspiciously smooth, suggesting it was the work of human excavation. Chu crouched down, running his fingers along the base of the wall until he found a narrow crack that confirmed his suspicions. This wall wasn't naturally formed. It was a man-made stone door. Groping blindly, he located the trigger, a stone ball which he pushed into the corner. With a rumble, the stone door slowly began to rise. Chu realized his companion had gone still. Xiao, I fear I won't be leaving this place, Xiao said calmly. If I can, said Chu, so can you. In this, at least, I'm not like you. The poison has seeped into my bones. Even the Jade of Heaven Lake's essence I absorbed is useless. What will you do? I cannot escape death. Perhaps it's better if I pass the Jade of Heaven Lake's essence on to you. You still have a glimpse of hope. The Xiao I know would never give up until the final moment. For me, this is the final moment. Carrying you here exhausted the last of my strength. I can't even stand. My legs are numb. Xiao smiled. There's just one problem. My body is full of poison. I can't guarantee you won't be poisoned as well if I transfer the essence to you. Chu frowned. Chu, said Xiao. Do you dare take a gamble? That is where we're going to end tonight. We will finish the rest of this tomorrow. Oh my goodness, tonight was a struggle, but I'm so glad that we got through it. I am so sorry for all the interruptions. That was ridiculous. But in any case, thank you for sticking with me. Hopefully tomorrow there will not be a gigantic thunder and windstorm outside that is messing with the internet. And so it will be much less distracting while we close out. But to anyone who watched this later or anyone that watched it now, thank you so much for joining me. I hope it was at least semi-enjoyable, even with all the pauses. And I will see you next time. See you tomorrow, actually, for the ending of Peerless. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye! I did it! I did do it, Esper Lady! Woo! Yeah, fingers crossed, me too. Good night.